The term tetrarchy describes any form of government where power is divided among four individuals, but in modern usage usually refers to the system instituted by Roman Emperor Diocletian in 293, marking the end of the crisis of the 3rd century and the recovery of the Roman Empire. This tetrarchy lasted until c. 313, when internecine conflict eliminated most of the claimants of power, leaving Constantine in the east and Licinius in the west. Terminology. Although the term tetrarch was current in antiquity, it was never used of the imperial college under Diocletian. Instead, the term was used to describe independent portions of a kingdom that were ruled under separate leaders. The Tetrarchy of Judea, established after the death of Herod the Great, is the most famous example of the antique tetrarchy. The term was understood in the Latin world as well, where Pliny the Elder glossed it as follows: each is the equivalent of a kingdom, and also part of one. As used by the ancients, the term describes not only different governments, but also a different system of government from the Diocletianic arrangements. The Judean Tetrarchy was a set of four independent and distinct states, where each tetrarch ruled a quarter of a kingdom as they saw fit. The Diocletianic Tetrarchy was a college led by a single supreme leader. When later authors described the period, this is what they emphasized. Amminus had Constantius II admonish Julian for disobedience by appealing to the example in submission set by Diocletian's lesser colleagues. Julian himself compared the Diocletianic tetrarchs to a chorus surrounding a leader, speaking in unison under his command. Only Lactantius, a contemporary of Diocletian and a deep ideological opponent of the Diocletianic state, referred to the tetrarchs as a simple multiplicity of rulers. Much modern scholarship was written without the term. Although Edward Gibbon pioneered the description of the Diocletianic government as of new empire, he never used the term tetrarchy, neither did Theodore Mommsen. It did not appear in the literature until used in 1887 by schoolmaster Hermann Schiller in a 2-volume handbook on the Roman Empire, to wit, Die Diocletianische Tetrarchie. Even so, the term did not catch on in the literature until Otto Seeck used it in 1897. Creation. The first phase, sometimes referred to as the diarchy, involved the designation of the general Maximian as co-emperor, firstly as Caesar in 285, followed by his promotion to Augustus in 286. Diocletian took care of matters in the eastern regions of the empire while Maximian similarly took charge of the western regions. In 293, feeling more focus was needed on both civic and military problems, Diocletian, with Maximian's consent, expanded the imperial college by appointing 2 Caesars, Galerius and Constantius Chlorus. In 305, the senior emperors jointly abdicated and retired, allowing Constantius and Galerius to be elevated in rank to Augusta. They in turn appointed 2 new Caesars, Severus II in the west under Constantius, and Maximinus in the east under Galerius, thereby creating the Second Tetrarchy. Regions and capitals. The 4 tetrarchs based themselves not at Rome but in other cities closer to the frontiers, mainly intended as headquarters for the defense of the empire against bordering rivals and barbarians at the Rhine and Danube. These centers are known as the Tetrarchic capitals. Although Rome ceased to be an operational capital, Rome continued to be nominal capital of the entire Roman Empire, not reduced to the status of a province but under its own unique prefect of the city. The 4 Tetrarchic capitals were Nicomedia in northwestern Asia Minor, a base for defense against invasion from the Balkans and Persia's Sassanids was the capital of Diocletian. The eastern Augustus, in the final reorganization by Constantine the Great, in 318, the equivalent of his domain. Facing the most redoubtable foreign enemy, Sassanid Persia, became the Praetorian Prefecture Oriens, the east, the core of later Byzantium. Sirmium in the Vojvodina region of modern Serbia, and near Belgrade, on the Danube border, was the capital of Galerius. The Eastern Caesar. This was to become the Balkans. Danube Prefecture. Illyricum. Mediolanum was the capital of Maximian, the Western Augustus. His domain became Italia Africa, with only a short exterior border. Augusta Treverorum was the capital of Constantius Chlorus, the Western Caesar, near the strategic Rhine border. It had been the capital of Gallic Emperor Tetricus I. This quarter became the Prefecture Galliae. Aquileia, a port on the Adriatic coast, and Eboracum, were also significant centers for Maximian and Constantius respectively. In terms of regional jurisdiction, there was no precise division between the four tetrarchs, and this period did not see the Roman state actually split up into four distinct sub-empires. Each emperor had his zone of influence within the Roman Empire, but little more, mainly high command in a war theatre. Each tetrarch was himself often in the field, while delegating most of the administration to the hierarchic bureaucracy headed by his respective praetorian prefect, each supervising several vicarii, the governors general in charge of another, lasting new administrative level, the civil diocese. For a listing of the provinces, now known as eparchy, within each quarter, see Roman province. In the west, the Augustus Maximian controlled the provinces west of the Adriatic Sea and the Citus, and within that region his Caesar, Constantius, controlled Gaul and Britain. In the east, the arrangements between the Augustus Diocletian and his Caesar, Galerius, were much more flexible. However, it appears that some contemporary and later writers, such as the Christian author Lactantius, and Sextus Aurelius Victor, misunderstood the tetrarchic system in this respect, believing it to have involved a stricter division of territories between the four emperors. Public image. Although power was shared in the tetrarchic system, the public image of the four emperors in the imperial college was carefully managed to give the appearance of a united empire. This was especially important after the civil war of the 3rd century. The tetrarchs appeared identical in all official portraits. Coinage dating from the Tetrarchic period depicts every emperor with identical features, only the inscriptions on the coins indicate which one of the four emperors is being shown. The Byzantine sculpture portrait of the four tetrarchs shows the tetrarchs again, with identical features and wearing the same military costume. Military successors. One of the greatest problems facing emperors in the 3rd century crisis was that they were only ever able to personally command troops on one front, at any one time. While Aurelian and Probus were prepared to accompany their armies thousands of miles between war regions, this was not an ideal solution. Furthermore, it was risky for an emperor to delegate power in his absence to a subordinate general, who might win a victory and then be proclaimed as a rival emperor himself by his troops. All members of the imperial college, on the other hand, were of essentially equal rank. Despite two being senior emperors and two being junior, the functions and authorities were also equal. Under the Tetrarchy, a number of important military victories were secured. Both the Diachic and the Tetrarchic system ensured that an emperor was nearby to every crisis area to personally direct and remain in control of campaigns simultaneously on more than just one front. After suffering a defeat by the Persians in 296, Galerius crushed Narsae in 298, reversing a series of Roman defeats throughout the century, capturing members of the imperial household and a substantial amount of booty and gaining a highly favorable peace treaty, which secured peace between the two powers for a generation. Similarly, Constantius defeated the British usurper Electus, Maximian pacified the Gauls, and Diocletian crushed the revolt of Domitianus in Egypt. Demise. When in 305 the 20-year term of Diocletian and Maximian ended, both abdicated. Their Caesares, Galerius and Constantius Chlorus, were both raised to the rank of Augustus, and two new Caesares were appointed, Maximinus and Flavius Valerius Severus. These four formed the Second Tetrarchy. However, the system broke down very quickly thereafter. When Constantius died in 306, Galerius promoted Severus to Augustus, while Constantine, Constantius' son, was proclaimed Augustus by his father's troops. At the same time, Maxentius, the son of Maximian, who also resented being left out of the new arrangements, defeated Severus before forcing him to abdicate and then arranging his murder in 307. Maxentius and Maximian both then declared themselves Augusta. By 308 there were therefore no fewer than 4 claimants to the rank of Augustus, and only one to that of Caesar. In 308 Galerius, together with the retired Emperor Diocletian and the supposedly retired Maximian, called an imperial conference at Carnuntum on the river Danube. The council agreed that Licinius would become Augustus in the west, with Constantine as his Caesar. In the east, Galerius remained Augustus and Maximinus remained his Caesar. Maximian was to retire, and Maxentius was declared an usurper. This agreement proved disastrous. By 308 Maxentius had become de facto ruler of Italy and Africa even without any imperial rank, and neither Constantine nor Maximinus, who had both been Caesares since 306 and 305 respectively, were prepared to tolerate the promotion of the Augustus Licinius as their superior. After an abortive attempt to placate both Constantine and Maximinus with the meaningless title Filius Augusta, they both had to be recognized as Augusta in 309. However, 4 full Augusta all at odds with each other did not bode well for the Tetrarchy system. Between 309 and 313 most of the claimants to the imperial office died or were killed in various civil wars. Constantine forced Maximian's suicide in 310. Galerius died naturally in 311. Maxentius was defeated by Constantine at the Battle of the Milvian Bridge in 312 and subsequently killed. Maximinus committed suicide at Tarsus in 313 after being defeated in battle by Licinius. By 313, therefore, there remained only 2 emperors, Constantine in the west and Licinius in the east. The Tetrarchic system was at an end, although it took until 324 for Constantine to finally defeat Licinius, reunite the 2 halves of the Roman Empire and declare himself sole Augustus. Timeline 286 to 293 Augusta Oriens Diocletian Occidens Maximian 293 to 305 Augusta Oriens Diocletian Italia A Africa Maximian Caesars Illyricum Galerius Gallia A Hispania Constantius Chlorus Usurpers Leaders of the Bagordi in Gaul Amandus Anelianus Africas Eugatanus Sabinus Iulianus Britannia Carisius Britannia Electus Egyptus Domitianus Egyptus Aurelius Achaeus Syria Coel Eugenius 305 to 306 Augusta Illyricum Galerius Gallia Hispania A Britannia Constantius Chlorus Caesars Oriens Maximinus Dia Italia A Africa Flavius Valerius Severus 306 to 307 Augusta Illyricum Galerius Italia A Africa Flavius Valerius Severus Caesars Oriens Maximinus Dia Galliae Hispania A Britannia Constantine I Roma Maxentius 307 to 313 Augusta Illyricum Galerius Gallia Hispania A Britannia Constantine I Thracia A Pontus to Taurus Licinius Italia Maxentius Oriens from Taurus to Egyptus Maximinus Dia Italia Maximian Caesars Oriens from Taurus to Egyptus Maximinus Dia Usurpers Africa Domitius Alexander 313 to 324 Augusta Oriens Licinius Occiden Constantine I Oriens Sextus Martinianus Caesars Italia Gallia Bassianus Illyricum Valerius Valens Oriens Licinius the Younger Occidens Crispus 324 Augustus Constantine I. Other schematic summary 1. Tetrarchy till 1. May 305 2. Tetrarchy till July 306. After the retirement of the two Augusta succeed the both previous Caesares and appoint Thwo new Caesares. Maximinus Dio is the nephew of Galerius Galerius. 3. Tetrarchy till 16. May 307. After the death of Constantius his legions proclamate his son Constantine to be the new Augustus. But Galerius elevates Severus to be the new Junior Augustus and compensates Constantine with the grade of Caesar. 4. Tetrarchy from 18. November 308 to the beginning of May 311. After the death of Severus it isn't Constantine who moves up in the higher title. In the Emperor's Conference of Carnuntum Diocletian decides that Licinius will be the new Augustus of the West. 5. Tetrarchy from May 311. After the death of Galerius he was succeeded by Maximinus Dio in the rank of an Augustus of the East, but is crowded by Licinius, who wants to have the status of the senior Augustus. Maximinus appoints firstly no new Caesar, Altor. It was assumed that this position should later on be filled out with the son of Severus, Flavius Severianus, or at least he was scheduled for this post. Tetrarchy. After the 8. October 316 to the end of 316, shortly before the turn of the year 316-317, for a short term exists the situation that both Augusta Constantine and Licinius appoint again a Caesar. If both want to give the appearance of a continuity of the Tetrarchy is also unclear, as the date stamping, which could also be the turn of the year 314-315. Tetrarchy from 1. March 317 to 18. September 324. The tetrarchic system ist at its end. The dynastic system has one. Both Augusta appoint her own sons to co-emperors, Constantine even two of his sons. Short before of his end Licinius appoints the general Martinianus on 3 July 324 to his co-emora. Legacy. Although the tetrarchic system as such only lasted until c. 313, many aspects survived. The fourfold regional division of the empire continued in the form of praetorian prefectures, each of which was overseen by a praetorian prefect and subdivided into administrative dioceses, and often reappeared in the title of the military supra-provincial command assigned to a magister militum. The pre-existing notion of consortium imperis, the sharing of imperial power, and the notion that an associate to the throne was the designated successor, was to reappear repeatedly. The idea of the two halves, the East and the West, re-emerged and eventually resulted in the permanent de facto division into two separate Roman empires after the death of Theodosius I. Other examples. Tetrarchies in the ancient world existed in both Thessaly and Galatia as well as among the British Countyarchy. The constellation of Jewish principalities in the Herodian kingdom of Judea was known as a tetrarchy. See Tetrarchy. Citations. QTD. And Tr. Ledbetter, Galerius, 3. Ledbetter, Galerius, 3. Ledbetter, Galerius, 3-4. The chronology has been thoroughly established by Kulb, Diocletian, and Kuhoff, Diocletian.